I should pick up.
Baby Dula.
Hello, Shrina. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, Shrutika, you're audible.
Okay, okay. Do you want to check anything in this link or
No, so the stream has already started, I think. So let's wait for the speaker to join.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Niharika.
Can we live?
Sagar, can we begin? People have joined.
Yes, ma'am.
Bino Paul is yet to join. I'll just call and check it.
Oh, then just wait, Sagar.
Hey Pooja, is Dr. Bino here?
He is unable to join because of some issue with his link. Just give me 2 minutes. We are just on the call with,
Okay.
and we are just figuring that out. Just 2 minutes.
Sure. Hi Pooja, is it a login issue?
Yeah, there is some technical issue with the speaker. We are trying to get him into this call. I'm really sorry for the delay, but I think it will take another 2 minutes. Was I audible?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we're live. Are we?
Yes, we are live. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Good
Hello.
afternoon, all. We are really sorry to be little starting little late because be like technology being very helpful for us. Sometimes it's really hard to figure it out how to get in. So yeah, a warm welcome to each one of you joining us today in this insightful webinar on demystifying human rights in business. I'm Shrutika Patil from Godrej Good and Green Department, and I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to be here, setting the stage for this crucial conversation. Today, we are privileged to have our host, Niharika Singh. She leads People Process at Godrej Industry Limited. She started her career in Godrej and has worked close to 9 years across Godrej Aggravate, Godrej Consumer Products, and now in corporate. She started in sales and marketing and founded her call in HR. Niharika has been instrumental in leading the prevention of sexual harassment policies effectiveness across the Godrej Group. This is where she first brushed up human rights issue in business. We are also honored to have today's speaker, Dr. Bino Paul, the Pro Vice Chancellor at the Tata Institution of Social Science. He has extensive academic journey from the University of Calicut to in Indian Institution of Technology, Bombay. He has profound expertise in labor economics, social sustainability, and microdata analytics, which speaks volume about his dedication and contribution to the academia. His research in this domain accumulating in numerous scholarly papers, and he has been successfully guiding the doctoral candidates for over 15 years. This reflects a deep commitment to his understanding and addressing the complex dynamics of human rights and labor with business. Thank you both for gracing this virtual platform. The issue of human rights violation in business operations is a pressing concern that demands our attention and collective action. Through this webinar, we aim to learn the critical link between human rights and business, discussing not only the challenges but also exploring practical measures that can be implemented to safeguard the fundamental rights while ensuring sustainable business practices. As we embark on this enriching journey of knowledge, I encourage each of you to actively participate by asking questions in this dialogue. Thank you, and let us now move towards this enlightening session. Over to you, Niharika.
Thank you, Shrutika. Thank you so much. And yes, you pointed out correctly, technical glitches are a way of life now. So as much as technology helps us, it can be sometimes a deterrent. So that makes me say hi to Dr. Bino for the first time. Otherwise, we would have introduced ourselves beforehand. So hi, Dr. Bino. Thank you so much for your time, taking out the time for this extremely important conversation with us. And you know, before I start asking you questions and asking you about human rights, what are human rights, and educating myself and educating the audience today. Let me first ask the audience, and this is a question for the audience, and you may just drop your answer in the chat. What do you think? And this is also what was mentioned on the invite. So this is also a test for you if you read the invite correctly. So what do Nike, Apple, Amazon, Boeing, or companies like General Electric have in common? Do type your answer in the chat box. I'm going to read out some of the responses as they come in. Yes, human rights violation cases. Yes, that's right. They've also posed human rights risks. So yes, they all, or one of the other commonalities is they all are pioneer companies in their industries, right? They've made themselves big in the space they are in, but there are also businesses that have faced human rights risk, particularly in supply chain. So that's where we begin with the conversation. And Dr. Bino, can you share in a gist what are human rights, and how do they relate to business?
Thank you, Niharika and Shrutika. So this is an amazing opportunity to interact with Godrej Collective fraternity. So concerning this important question, what is human rights? There is a genesis, of course, especially post Second World War. It doesn't mean that First World War or prior to that, Christians never existed. It existed amply, profoundly resonated in literary works. Charles Dickens is a classic case. But then, post Second World War, this got amplified, and a major watershed was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, which clearly said it in preamble that human rights is a kind of recognition of, first, dignity. The dignity regardless of any context. Dignity is the right of every human. So it has individual and collective dimension. Second aspect, equality and inalienable rights. Two parts. Rights cannot be separated or alienated from the human identity, human as an identity, and human as a system, whether individual or collective. So two dimensions came from Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which proliferated, I would say, or articulated in numerous ways, especially 30 articles, 30 articles. 30, there's no point in saying first article, second article, third article, but we can bundle it. Maybe 4 or 5 bundles. First bundle is, I would say, collective reasoning, collective conscience and reasoning. So rights is a kind of inalienable thing within every individual, but it has a collective dimension. So people can't be ignorant of others' rights. And there is also collective response mechanism to it. So that's one bundle which subsumes many of the articles. Another is rights and freedom, which talks about rights associated with thinking, expression, listening, hearing. So that way it goes. So it's a system. Another crucial aspect is property. Property, if you go by stat, worldwide, especially geographies like India or any geography for that matter, there's pronounced gender inequality when it comes to inheriting property. There's a convincing stat. We don't get into that. So that's a crucial thing. Expression and its articulation is another element. So I think more are emerging now. The crucial one, let me point out among this, which is very relevant to business, is decent work and supply chain standards regarding environment. So somehow these are all interlinked: work, environment, and responsible business. So I guess more succinctly, I would say these are the basic constituents of human rights. Very, very foundational stuff. Yeah.
Just a second part to that question, and thank you, Dr. Bino, for highlighting the historical context of it also, and something that struck me very powerfully was human rights starts from dignity, right? And how it has evolved over a period of time. Thank you for sharing that. This is the second part of that question of how it relates to the business, Dr. Bino. Maybe in the past it was different, and today, in today's times, the context might be totally different.
Thank you. That's an interesting question. People always say, this is an interesting question because good things are not always right things. Right things are not necessarily good things. So good is a kind of valuation in competitive world. This is good. That's not so good. But right is right. It comes from jurisprudence and logic. Good is an evaluative situation, evaluative scenario. So that's where I think business chips in. Good business doesn't mean it's a right business, especially in the emergence of two things. One is global value chains, and another is digital disruption and gig economy. So value chain, what happens? Well, I have an aesthetic material I wear, footwear, shoe. It looks excellent. There is a brand and it's well advertised, disseminated. There's a brand persona I associate with it. But if we work backwards, it's what do you call it? Origins are in the pit, which, say, for example, tanneries. Most of the tanneries, statistically, if you see, that are supplying to great brands or not so great brands, tanneries are tanneries. Out of 100 tanneries, very few tanneries ever upgraded from hazardous production to cleaner, hygienic production. But still, tanneries exist. Now, the question is, tanneries opting for cleaner technology that can save workers' health. Yeah, there is something called DLF, I think, WHO, World Health Organization measure, which is called disability adjusted life. It's especially its deficit. That means you work in a tannery in toxic conditions, bare hand. 10 years work is enough to guarantee 20 years existence as a dependent at home. You may remain bedridden. So that's the trade-off, human capacity trade-off. But why it's happening? Because there's a narrow margin bargain at the upstream part of the production. Therefore, downstream can be almost snatched or claimed by owner of the brand and design. Whereas equipment owner or human sweat owner will get very less. But now the question is, can we create a new business, global business order that has something called total responsibility? That's why supply chain standards are much. So that's a big issue. Second issue is gig economy. Now, gig economy, the fundamental thing is people like Marx, etc., philosophers, it's very tough to understand because Marx works around product and the value imposed in it, value and its embodiment. But in gig economy, people deliver food to you, but what really matters is biryani delivered to you. No, it is data, demographics, and how frequently I buy. Given that I buy X, what is the probability of buying Y? That is solved. But then the big issue is it opaque or transparent? I think many governments have been engaging with industries about ownership of data. Now, and employment relation is very unclear. What makes people closer to constitution is contracts and relationships. It's codification. But in a gig economy, that's also opaque. Opacity of data and opacity of relations. So I think these are the two things I link: human rights and business, value chain and digitalized gig economy.
Thank you, Dr. Bino. It's really interesting to know and kind of relate to these two contexts in today's world, and I think it becomes it makes the conversation a lot easier for our audience to understand. Um, I did recently read a statistic that surely got me intrigued, saying that globally around 160 million children aged 5 to 17 years are engaged in child labor. Sectors like hospitality, construction, agriculture, mining, textiles have, you know, have been in the news for this. And I understand that some of these sectors may have very complex supply chains, and such violations would never reach a business, right? Uh, but how can we improve? Like, as a community, how can we improve? And how can a particular business measure the risk of human right violation? And what measures they can implement to prevent it?
Thank you. Thank you. I guess nowadays people talk about, of course, it's borrowed from engineering and production technology systems, life cycle assessment. So usually life cycle assessment is applied to technological strata and streaming. But now there's another concept, social life cycle assessment. Social life cycle assessment really looks at the way work is organized and how's it done. And as I mentioned, there is always a contention about margins. Who's the owner of the margin, which every step of business generates? It's a negotiative process. But in the process, what happens is across the world, especially in the global south, Bangladesh, Pakistan, I think Myanmar, India, a variety of other countries, sub-Saharan African countries, work comes as a home-based system. So I say, I'm the contractor. I say, I need this many units over this many hours. But it's a kind of substitution for integrated production. So you take work back home. Now the question is that margin, what household is going to get is bargained, negotiated, and at times there is a pressure. So in the process, what's likely to happen? I came across during my field surveys, children get involved, but you cannot ascertain whether child is involved or not, because you have to knock the door, knock the household. Hi, is children involved? You can't get data because that kind of ascertaining fact is almost impossible. But there are evidences that clearly point to this reality. So, of course, at times what happens when this pressure grows, it will exclude and preclude children from regular educational process, especially children who have gone past 14, 13, on the brink of 13. So they get deployed in the process. Ultimately, what happens is they don't get opportunity to progress in the educational or skill ladder. So they get blocked there. So that kind of child labor is growing and we cannot measure it. That's partly because of this negotiation over margins. Some brands know it, they act responsibly. So of course, there's one question, the fair trade issues. Of course, this has been raised time and again, but I think there is need for more responsibility from the business on it. But it's a reality. Reality, but you cannot measure it.
Sure, Dr. Bino. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. And I'm just going to quickly remind our audience that if there are any questions, feel free to drop that in the chat and I'll take those one by one. Continuing to this, Dr. Bino, you mentioned about the violations in the business and how children at a certain age get excluded. And there may not be, adequate ways in which we can measure it, whereas it's business responsibility to kind of, implement it. And do you think there are still white spaces over there? And
yes.
also,
sorry, you were saying something.
Yeah, no worries. So do you think there are also white spaces over there? And also, it's becoming increasingly important for business, for people, academicians and researchers like yourself to make businesses understand that there's a business benefit to it? What's your take on that?
I can start with data. There is something called Pen World data, which captures 180 countries plus data over almost 8 decades, 1950 onwards. If you plot it, you get interesting thing, especially productivity and human-machine ratio. Productivity means output by labor. So per human output vis-a-vis human machine. Per human, what is the value of machine? One of the geographies India, you see it's in the lower tier, low technology and low productivity. Whereas Brazil kind of countries in the BRICS group, China, Brazil is in mid-level technologies and mid-level productivity. Then Nordic countries or big geographies, Anglo-Saxon geographies like USA or East Asian geographies like Japan, high technology and high productivity. So I guess there are two things when we say human rights are violated. Number one, human is stripped of rights. Second, it won't allow human to use its fullest capacity. So productivity is affected. A classic case is this thing, tanning I mentioned. Higher the toxicity, the active peaking of human effort is likely to be crippled. Because at the peak productive age, I may slow down. And it creates huge impact for family also, because I need at least 1 or 2 people devoting to care of mine. Mostly male members, then women have to do it in a patriarchal society. So, but then industry can overcome it through upgrading. Classic case I can tell you, across industries, there is a good evidence of industrial upgrading, how it contributes to skilling and better human potential tapping. Even tanning, cleaner, those firms using cleaner technologies seem to tap better productivity out of human resource. That also calls for even SME levels, formal training programs. In automotive value chain, for example, there is again tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, who are supplying to original equipment manufacturer, who owns up the brand and design. There again, many of these original equipment manufacturers insist that you should upgrade. Two levels of upgrading. One is technological upgrading that goes along with social upgrading. So I think that's a great opportunity to correlate social upgrading and technological upgrading. That space is really unexplored in India. Very few sectors are into it. I think automotive sector is in its early stage, whereas many sectors haven't even thought about it. If we really don't switch over to it, our sustainability transition will be very, very precarious. So something like what's happening in tanning is going to be the reality for many sectors. Work 15 hours, then remain bedridden for next few years and die. And the whole family will be in deadlock. That's a sustainability connotation. But the industry can work wonders there through a trust mechanism. Immediately, it's not measurable. That's the difference between finance and sustainable finance. Sustainable finance talks about 3 major milestones: moving from shareholder to stakeholder, stakeholder to common benefit and purpose. So that kind of governance upgrading is really required.
Thank you, Dr. Bino. I think that is a call for action in your own way that you've done with us. Thank you for that. And I think the next question can be a good kind of a follow-up question, and I'm going to take questions from the audience. Is that there are several news reports that recently highlight and criticize the challenging work conditions from, very varied companies of very big size. For example, we've read about, Amazon. We've read about the relationship between Foxconn and Apple, and as Apple has been greatly criticized for it. How do you think businesses of such magnitude can prioritize workers' welfare, and especially the businesses who are in a position to kind of make that happen, while managing operational efficiency and meeting consumer demands. Right? I think you've spoken about that, and we're going a little bit in depth over there. And what strategies can businesses adopt to ensure there are ethical practices through global supply chains?
Okay, I'll make a bit contentious proposition here concerning the doability. One classic interesting case is the difference between human resource management and industrial relations. HR is more aligned with strategy of business and what shareholders really look forward. Whereas industrial relation, in its formative years and just before HR evolved, remain more or less like autonomous system, because you have to handle the grievance, deliver the rights, and of course working along with both employee and employer. But now, can we restore it? I'm not saying 100% right driven, that's tough, but I think good and right. Good and right is a very tough combination, but then the current HR is only for good. Very little work on footprints on right part. So I think like strategic HR, the need of the hour is strategic industrial relations, IR, which understands the life cycle assessment issues with multiple dimensions, techno, economic, and social. Because that creates a new governance mechanism. It also calls for governance setup. But then that visioning is not with every enterprise. And it's also crucial to remember, next few years, after a few years, the pressure of sustainable finance is going to be there. The metrics is going to change, especially when we move, I think, transit from stakeholder to shareholder to stakeholder, then stakeholder to common purpose, especially in the context of climate change, climate-induced risk, climate change-induced risk. I'm sure the governance and its language has to change.
Yeah.
And the question is, will it resonate with professions like people-related professions like human resource? And its multidimensionality has to be brought in. Neutrality, like accountants enjoy neutrality. Accountant is nobody's enemy, nobody's friend. But I'm not saying HR should be like that. HR has to have empathizing capability. At the same time, capacity to govern rights and deliver rights. But I think it's a bit crippled at this moment, because HR is perceived as friend of owner and shareholder. That's why it's a contentious statement I'm making. But in the world of sustainable finance, that paradigm might not work very well.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bino. I think this was the most relevant answer, because a lot of our friends who've joined the call are from both those backgrounds, and even our friends from manufacturing locations have joined us. So that really helps us understand. We have a question from, I think, Dimpy Dave. And she asked, how can we enforce human rights in our supply chain? And I think the question is more, you've answered in some bits, but the question is more towards how do we start or how do we begin?
Oh, yes. I guess that's not a rocket science, because it's a question of standards. A classic case I can give you. One is global supply chain standards of International Labour Organization. It's available online. It gives you relevant caveats and templates. Second is, I can give you an example how this attainment of standards really help. I done a machine learning analysis, especially by using random forest algorithm, to understand whether attainment of environmental standard really helps the firm. I studied attainment of ISO 14,000, which is an environmental standard. I found among 50,000 factories in India, organized sector factories in India, manufacturing factories in India, 5,000 plus have attained 14,000. ISO 14,000, whereas others haven't. 45,000 aren't. But compared to firms who haven't attained standards, cleaner technology standards and labor standards, those who have attained cleaner standards sees better correlation between human and machine. It means they have formal programs for training and learning. So that kind of coherence and adaptive processes should be brought in. Now the question, I think people managers and HR managers can be really harnessed to ensure these mechanisms. And of course, another crucial checkpoint is, I think you get it from the website if you want. Euro Foundation, Euro, EURO Foundation, Euro Foundation. Euro Foundation is a collective body of European Union that looks into collective bargaining, productivity, and industrial standards. If you see the curated materials of Euro Foundation, it talks about multiple frames and checkpoints. One is industrial consultation. Consultation really involves very organized way of setting terms of reference for decent work, be it pay, social security, health, productivity, technology, and skilling. So that should be again brought in governance with templates. Like how performance management system works, there is templates. It's not 100% sacrosanct. Some measures are used. Some use bell curve, some may not use it. It's again contentious. So even for human rights and labor standards, there can be templates. It will remain contentious, like bell curve.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bino, for that perspective. I'm going to ask a follow-up question on this asked by Janvi. I think, thank you, Dimpi, for the question that you've asked. So Janvi asks, in your opinion, how effective do you think contractual obligations in supply chain contracts to ensure compliance with laws are when it comes to protection of human rights?
I think there are two sides to it. If you see the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, one of the dimensions I forgot to mention is institutional commitment. Again, there's another document by ILO on future of work in the context of global gig economy and disruption, digital disruption. It says you need institutions. Now, let me come to institutions. Institution includes formal and informal things. Formal is mainly law. Say, for example, tribunals, law, different conciliatory mechanisms. Informal is something like trust creation mechanisms through norms and best practices. So I think we have to take both the routes to create systems in place on human rights. So it's very clear. Rights alone is a corner solution. It's of no use. So we need to have right and good. So rights alone and bad business is not a good thing. But bad way handling things and good business is also a problem. So for that, I guess it's crucial to have understanding, clear standard operating procedures about conciliatory processes, which ensures neutrality, and at the same time, it won't be used as a political instrument to thwart people and undercut them, because it can be gamified. So safeguards have to be appropriately brought in. So, but my hunch is it's a strategic vantage. It's a strategic point of view, how to align business growth, productivity growth, learning part with human rights. So a classic case I can give you is, in a multicultural team, often these issues arise. I do have certain orientation which is not liked by others. So maybe I'll be isolated. Notwithstanding my abilities and capabilities, I am isolated. But it could be solved in variety of ways. One is very, very vertical way, command, but it will not sustain. So one has to have proper modular trust mechanisms, which will take time, but then which will transform the culture. So I think if we adopt a machine organizational culture, machine in the sense not at all animated live organization, which is least adaptive but makes things happening, efficient, that may not really cater to this. Rather, organization need to be little more adaptive, cultural, and relational based. So coming to obligational, contractual obligation, it's a big challenge. You see, there are fundamentally 4 types of contractual systems. One is use and throw. Use and throw means it happens in India. Almost 150 million workforce belong to use and throw category. They congregate or gather on the street. They're picked from there. Casual work. We see them every now and then. Construction industry uses them. Second is hire and fire. Use and throw is different from hire and fire because hire and fire has a paper or word of mouth, but it's more sudden. Then the third part is obligational. Then fourth is relational. Most of managers belong to relational category because they draw entitlements, little more autonomy, used to or maybe exposed to horizontal systems rather than vertical systems. Whereas obligational contracting and the second one I said, hire and fire, is not entitled. These are not entitled to any horizontal way, trust based, where what matters is loyalty, almost like underworld, mafia. Things get done through loyalty. I told you to do, you have to do it. Don't ask me question back. But in multicultural teaming, what works better is trust. But then that's the vertical horizontal issue has to be addressed for human rights, because unless there is democratic values in existence, it becomes merely procedural and ritualistic. But it's more an organic thing, because as organization deep dive into diversity, new forms of challenges are going to be there. New forms of exclusion is likely to emerge. That's my humble uptake at this moment.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bino. I think that takes me to the next question. We've spoken about contractual obligations and how and you had a very interesting uptake on that. But there are also proactive companies that are ensuring they factor in human rights when their supply chain, and ensuring they go a step further and address it upfront. For example, there was Ben and Jerry's, for example, they source fair trade certified ingredients. Do these fair trade certifications have value? And can you explain how these fair trade certifications work?
Oh yes, I think these are valued. It has 2 dimensions. One contention is these are non-tariff barriers. In the free trade, this is the argument. You compete just on the basis of price difference. Don't ask these questions. Toxin, child labor. That's one school. On the other hand, there's another school that talks about responsibility, which varies from individual level to collective level. I guess there's a market shaping with this kind of hunch. Strategies are also shaping up. So ethics, rights, collective conscience are not alien to this business proposition. So I think this is going to grow leaps and bounds, because as per World Investment Report, which was published a few years ago, not the current one, Out of 5 units of world trade, more than 4 is through global value chains. The problem with global value chains is it's different types. One is market driven. Market driven means we don't have to have a prolonged partnership. As long as prices are attractive, I go with you. Then say goodbye. But there is no caveat anything. It's not a governance thing. It's just for profit. Second is turn the key. What do you call it? Modularity. Turn the key. You trust me. I am your supplier. You just trust me. I'll give you the key. You operate. But there again, there's not much spoken about reciprocity of rights. The third one, relational. The fourth one is captive. Captive means I have a supplier just supplying to me. No big issue coming. But concerning the relational value chain system, these things are brought in. So I think it's well, as you rightly said, it's well reflected in best practices. If you do a survey, especially UN Global Compact and integrated reporting system of conglomerates based at India or abroad, it's very clear. They talk about their suppliers and what kind of standards they upgrade to. So if you compare last 5 years reports, I won't name any company, but whoever produced annual integrated reports, especially automotive sector and other sectors as well, they talk about how committed they are, not only their commitment, also their suppliers and stakeholders' commitment. So 2 dimensions they brought in, stakeholder and supplier. Some annual integrated reports have 3 dimensions, stakeholder, shareholder, common people, commons. So community at large and global community. So I think these dimensionalities are emerging, and it resonates with project languages. So I think rights are usually seen as impediments at times, impeding the financial progression or wealth progression. I think that's being challenged now, especially with new uncertainties that emerge from 3 fundamental forces. One is climate, another is demographics, third is digital technology. Demographic is a classic case. I can come to that point just as a case in point. Imagine disability. That is, I'm not permanent disability I'm talking. Temporary disability due to dengue fever. Dengue, it's an epidemiological state. And people can have prolonged temporary disability. And it raises many right issues because, if normal expectation is that I should work 13, 14 hours, but then dengue will disable me for some time. Now, how we bring some of these disability adjustment mechanisms within rights. So it's data and evidence driven. And that means it calls for proper nuanced development for a better governance. So I think innovation in governance really matters at this point. That's why many startups fell into this trap of toxicity of work. I will not name, but I think social media and confirmed, unconfirmed evidences, shreds of evidences point to toxicity, new forms of toxicity at work, especially in startups. That's a governance deficit.
Thank you, Dr. Bino. I think we have another question from Dr. We have another question from Aditya Vayu, and then is the social upgrading a result of tech upgrade? Would front loading of social upgrading help the organization? And is there any serious research supporting the same? I think what he's asking is the relationship between technological advancement in workplace and improvements in social condition, better work facilities within the organization. I'm not sure that's right. Whether that leads to any strategic advantage in prioritizing social improvements first to get tech advancements. Is there any research that can guide us towards it, or is there still, you would say, work in progress?
Oh, yes. I guess there is a journal, set of journals, Sustainability Science and Sustainable Development. These are two different journals. Our works published in Sustainable Development point to this thing. We did field work on automobile sector and leather work. There, it's very clear. The firms that opted for cleaner technology are the ones who worked along with workers, especially for their social upgrading. Social upgrading involves multiple things, multidimensional. One is contributing to learning and skilling, number one. Number two, working with their families. I think people don't talk much about CSR of small and medium enterprises. CSR is generally associated with medium and big firms. But then engaging with workers and family and their communities and extended systems contribute a lot. There are a few cases. Some are very really exemplary ones. And there is a data set. It's called World Bank Enterprise Survey. Our team analyzed it. I think this paper is forthcoming. We studied, again using machine learning, what really drives four forms of innovations: product innovation, process innovation, organizational innovation, marketing innovation. Four forms of innovation. Across these streams of innovation, the most critical classifier or a determinant that emerged was learning. Whether firm has formal learning system, be small, medium, large. Across scales, it remained. So we also used random forest. So one tree we analyzed, also we made a forest out of it. The result remains same. So we call in our paper, it's a tip off of growth. So I think in low wage, low margin firms, there's not much facility for learning. It's more enforced upon task, which become repetitive and ultimately de-skills people. Not only de-skills people, deprive them of proper health and eventually they sink. That's one level. But then we are talking about adaptive learning process and upgrading without any fear. Maybe I may lose a few employees to my rival, but it doesn't mean that there should not be any facility. So, but I think it requires a lot of push and policy. But SME level, the problem is it's difficult to have a seed capital or autonomous funding. They have to raise their own money. It's not very tough. It's very tough because it's all all-round show. Bowling, fielding, batting, all to be done by one. But it doesn't happen even in a small teams like volleyball. Volleyball every team has 6 members. But you can see some people specialize in serve, some people specialize in cut, some people are blockers, and they also vary in height. Even mid-height people you can see in volleyball team. That's how volleyball team is composed. So I guess it's crucial to invest on heterogeneity and learning. Even SMEs, there is empirical evidence that clearly shows more the upgrading in terms of attainment of environmental and labor and human standards, rights and standards, as well as learning, really contribute to good uptakes in terms of productivity and business. So there is good empirical evidence.
That's a extremely interesting insight, Dr. Bino, because this interconnectivity between human rights and learning systems, formal mechanisms. I think most of us weren't aware of that, and that's interesting to know. I'm going to move on, and please bear with us as we started about 10 minutes late. Dr. Bino, if you don't mind, I'm going to continue with the discussion and ask you one or two more questions.
Oh, sure.
So and this is for us as a global company, because we would really like to know this. Most multinational businesses ensure they follow law of the land concerning labors, but particularly in case of raw material sourcing, they can't seem to ensure this. How can we integrate it in our operations? And which business functions need to be involved to drive this effectively, do you think? Is it only one, accountability of a particular function, or there's a collective, piece required over there?
Thank you. It's a very tough question, actually. If you see the global material systems, it's a very intriguing and contentious stuff. Because if you look at geographies like Afghanistan, Afghanistan is one of the suppliers of strategic strategic minerals. Yeah. And we know what's happening over there.
Yeah.
Violence is a common thing. People have been stripped of their rights, including right to education, right to access, right to food at times, right to equality, right to expression, across 30 articles. Very few are, not even single, is satisfied. One reason is it's a material rich country. So I think in material supply chain, there is something called corner solution. Corner means zero right orientation. I get my supply, I look at only that. So that means to come out of it, we need global consensus, because it involves a lot of geopolitical situation. But there is hardcore evidence that this is the way it happens. Strategic minerals, especially strategic materials or strategic minerals, is kind of can of worms. Who will open that? It's an issue. It's a big issue. If I say there is a solution, I'm lying. So it's a problem area.
Thank you, Dr. Bino. I think that candidness really helped us to get your point of view over there. And it's a bigger challenging problem that needs to be solved at a bigger level. And the moment you said Afghanistan, I knew where this was going. It was just not, it can't be solved at a company level, but I think still a lot of the companies are trying their best to.
Oh yeah, the treasure is their curse. They live in the treasure, live with the treasure. Treasure is the curse now.
Absolutely. That brings me to our last question, and I'll then open up to the audience if they have any question. Meanwhile, please feel free to kind of ask any question, drop them in the chat, and we'll take that up. So, Dr. The next question, perhaps the last of our discussion, is that consumers and us other stakeholders like the investors and even regulatory bodies for that matter are increasingly focusing on human rights in business, right? And in India, European Union, for example, we now have mandatory reporting of human rights awareness and violations to be reported by companies, part of their statutory reporting, right? So, and the pressure is building, not just, community wise, but also business wise. And in your research experience, do you think companies are equipped to deal and manage this? I know from my own experience that, when we were rolling out the POSH effectiveness piece, the policies, the guidelines, and really working on ground to make sure that those work, the effort to bring it together was immense, right? And human rights is a much larger aspect and a much larger space, and POSH is just a part of it. It's like scratching the surface. How do you reckon businesses to be doing that? What kind of resources, and are they adept currently to do this?
Yeah, I think it's again a bit tough question, but there is a silver lining. First of all,
Sorry, we'll.
the business schools. Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Bino. We can hear you. There's no problem in that. I think the video was a little shaky, that's all. We can't hear you now. I think there's a bit of a lag there. We can hear it and
Yeah,
see
yeah.
you clearly now.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll repeat.
No worry. Yeah.
I guess there is an issue. One is legacy. Most of the decision makers were trained in a business school system that envisaged strategy as the process of decision making, wherein material is inanimate, but material as life and rights issue. Now, will we do away with that? Is a question. Because if you see the business pedagogy, one level it's all about price and business environment. On the other level, it's around tangible and intangible resources. It's between that. But across this, so resources include intellectual capital, technology, R&D. The other side, your competitors' price and buyer-supplier relations. But across these paradigms, material and running stuff, including electricity, water, aerosols, air, these are all inanimate. No animation is given. I think that is very crucial at this moment. So the legacy has to be broken. And new professional ethos and thinking has to evolve. And unfortunately, that's in the early stage, even in academic leaders like Harvard Business School. They have brought in sustainability thinking, but this remains as a Gordian knot to crack. Life with material, even mobile phone, mineral is an issue. Material and mineral is an issue, which is fully embedded with all kind of human right violations. Then how would one think of its strategy and sustainability, looking mineral as a live and animated stuff? So I think we should break away from legacy and start thinking afresh.
That's a very interesting insight, Dr. Bino. Thank you so much. And with that, I think we don't have any further questions from the audience. If you have, I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Just waiting there if anyone has any questions. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bino. Thank you for your insights. It was really interesting conversation, especially for a novice like myself. And greatly appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'll leave. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Niharika. Thank you, all the attendees, for enlightening this discussion. Until next time, let's continue our commitment to integrate human rights into business practices for the better future. Till then, stay engaged, stay informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrutika. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And thank you, the Good and Dream, the entire team. Great work. Thanks.